In most families, competition among siblings is actually created by the parents. Most, if not all, sibling rivalry is initiated when a parent favors one child over another. Now, when two siblings don't get along, we have to look at the root cause. And more often than not, that root is the parent. People cling to their perceptions of someone. So if they have decided a certain parent is amazing, kind, or selfless, nothing you say will change that experience. Your lived experience becomes irrelevant in the face of their idealized image. Toxic family, sibling rivalry, going no contact. These aren't just trends. They are lived experiences, often born from years of pain, silence, and trying to hold a family together while slowly falling apart. Cut them off might sound empowering, but the truth is, it's never that easy when it comes to your own blood. Sometimes the people you needed the most growing up were the ones who hurt you the deepest. And in trying to protect yourself, you might also end up distancing yourself from the ones who didn't deserve the fallout. That's the complexity of family, where love and harm can exist in the same place. Going no contact isn't about revenge, it's about survival. But even in that, we have to ask, am I setting boundaries or repeating the same cycle of disconnection that once wounded me? This is a critical and sensitive topic. It's not black and white. The narrative that cutting off toxic family members is always the answer doesn't work for everyone because we are fundamentally wired for connection and community. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a big advocate for taking space to heal. Time away can help you process the grief, the what ifs, the pain of what it could have been. Giving yourself the grace is essential, and over time, that space can bring you to a place of deeper acceptance. And from that place, you might feel ready to re engage with clear boundaries in place. You can't let others know what's not okay while also gradually expanding your capacity, your emotional capacity for connection. Let's be real. If we keep cutting people off just to avoid certain individuals, we might also be cutting off others who have never harmed us. Yes, sometimes conflict is necessary, and I'm not saying avoid difficult conversations, but unless the entire circle is truly unsafe or abusive, cutting everyone out could only lead to more isolation. As we age, our inner circle naturally gets smaller, but ideally, it should also get more intentional. The truth is, there will always be difficult people in our lives, no matter how much inner work we do. That's just the world we live in. We can't control the existence of toxic people. If we could, the world would be a much more peaceful place. But here's a deeper question to reflect on. Does cutting every difficult person out really brings you peace? Or is it a form of emotional avoidance? Again, nuance matters. Say you have a toxic relative you see only once a year at a family gathering. Do you have the emotional bandwidth to handle that interaction? Or do you feel the need to completely cut ties to protect your peace? In some contexts, yes, cutting someone off is valid, especially when it's a friend or a connection who adds no value to your life where your values clearly don't align. But sometimes what we label as toxic is just really incompatibility. Maybe they aren't toxic. Maybe you have just outgrown them. Maybe your values have shifted. That doesn't make them a bad person. It just means they are no longer aligned with where you are headed. And that's okay. Not everyone is meant to grow with you or be in your life forever. Some people are part of your life for a season, and when that season ends, it's time to move forward without resentment. And sometimes what we carry from these family dynamics run deeper than just surface level conflict. There are emotional wounds, many of us don't even realize we are holding, especially those tied to our early experiences within the family system. Let's talk about one of the most overlooked yet deeply impactful of this is the abandonment wound, not always caused by someone leaving, but by emotional absence that goes unnoticed. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Veena Raji and I'm a certified trauma healing practitioner and I have personally lived with complex PTSD, severe anxiety and deep attachment wounds with barely any support. And after years of doing the real deep inner work, I finally healed. And now I'm here to support others who are going through it because healing shouldn't be something you have to figure out alone. And it took me a long time to understand what actually works when it comes to healing core wounds. And now that I know, I'm not here to gatekeep. I use a mix of somatic work, EMDR, hypnosis, and energy healing, all powerful tools that go deep. Now, if this speaks to you and you feel called to work with me, just reach out. All my details are available in the info section below, and I look forward to connecting with you. We hear a lot about abandonment wounds, but what often goes unnoticed, especially in many Asian households, and I say this because that's the background that I come from and I can relate to it. It's the emotional abandonment caused by parental bias. This form of abandonment isn't always loud or obvious. It's subtle, it's cultural, it's deeply ingrained. In many families, parents place their attention and energy almost exclusively on the eldest child, especially when it comes to education. Why? Because the eldest is often expected to fulfill their parents' unfulfilled dreams, achieve success to lift the family status, take care of younger siblings, or in some cases, serve as a symbol of their success as parents. Now, this leaves the other children, especially the youngest or the middle children, feeling emotionally neglected, overlooked, or invisible. And here's how these abandonment wounds often show up in these dynamics, and some that I have personally experienced, and so have many others. Parents constantly seeking advice or validation from the eldest child while dismissing the thoughts and feelings of the younger ones. Feeling like your opinion didn't matter unless echoed by an older sibling, being criticized more often or held to a different or lower standards, feeling unseen or unheard, especially if you were the quiet one, the sensitive one, or the one who didn't meet expectations. Now, these are the small everyday moments that shape a child's emotional landscape. So, if you're watching this, I want you to ask yourself, were your feelings dismissed or invalidated? Were you blamed for things that weren't your fault? Were you constantly criticized or compared to others? Did you feel like you had to be perfect to earn love? Were your experiences denied or minimized? Did your parents choose work, status, or another sibling over your emotional needs? Did you live in a home filled with emotional neglect, addiction, or conflict? This is what emotional abandonment can look like. And it doesn't always come from physical absence, it can come from being emotionally overlooked, compared, or seen only through the lens of expectations. Abandonment doesn't just mean someone left, it can mean someone was never fully there to begin with. In most families, competition among siblings is actually created by the parents. Most, if not all, sibling rivalry is initiated when a parent favors one child over another, and in many cases, this favoritism doesn't stem from love but from expectations placed on the child to fulfill their desires, whether for social validation, approval, or to maintain an image of being the ideal parent, which leads to the inevitable neglect. Now, when two siblings don't get along, we have to look at the root cause. And more often than not, that root is the parent. Why would two people raised under the same roof by the same parents have completely different experiences? Because that's the truth. We can all have different experiences and relationships with each individual in our lives, even if we come from the same household. Your sibling may have had a very different experience with your parents than you did. The issue is most people are conditioned to form perceptions based on what they see and hear, especially among close friends and relatives. The successful child is rarely questioned. Instead, they receive praise, support, and care. Meanwhile, the less successful or more emotionally expressive child is often frowned upon, blamed, ridiculed, and labeled as ungrateful. This comparison creates an unspoken point system where one child is placed on a pedestal and even their mistakes are overlooked, while the other is stuck on the lowest rung of the ladder, constantly reminded of everything they didn't do right. And this divide is deeply painful, and over time, it fragments the child's sense of identity and self worth, often leading to unspoken hostility, unresolved grievances, and resentment toward the favored sibling. But if we go deeper into the psyche, there are hidden truths most people don't want to acknowledge. People cling to their perceptions of someone. So if they have decided a certain parent is amazing, kind, or selfless, nothing you say will change that experience. Your lived experience becomes irrelevant in the face of their idealized image. Unfortunately, this is how society often functions, and I have witnessed this dysfunction firsthand in my own family. I come from a large family with many relatives and cousins, and after 35 years of being one of the youngest, I can tell you this with conviction. Sibling fallouts are never coincidences. They often stem from parents who triangulate their children and pit them against each other in subtle ways to maintain control. Most people will quickly label this behavior as narcissism, but what I have observed is that at its core, it's often a deep fear of judgment and criticism. It's a need for control that runs deep, especially in cultures where image, honor, and obedience are valued over emotional awareness or fairness. There's more to this dynamic than just dysfunction. It's what we now understand as generational trauma passed down unconsciously. And it's deeply rooted in the socio-economic structure of previous generations. Now, if we look back 50 years ago, times were different. Many families came from poverty. Some migrated across countries, taking on multiple jobs, often just to survive. Out of that struggle came a deep obsession with shaping the next generation for success. In many cases, this meant pouring every hope into one child, usually the eldest, with the expectation that they would be the one to break the cycle, get an education, and financially rescue the entire family. And while the world has changed in many ways over the decades, and more children now have access to education and opportunity, the weight of those unspoken expectations hasn't gone away. One child becomes the pride of the family. The others are often overlooked, dismissed, or emotionally neglected if they fail to live up to that ideal. Now, when you grow up feeling like the overlooked or misunderstood child, that internalized sense of not being good enough becomes a silent wound you carry into adulthood. And for many, this unspoken abandonment doesn't just create emotional distance, it builds a quiet, growing tension that can eventually rupture family dynamics, which brings us to what many are calling now the no contact epidemic. There's a growing conversation around how modern day therapy is causing social divides and estrangement from families, but let's go a little deeper. Are adults really cutting off their parents without attempting repair or reconnection? Or are they finally choosing to remove themselves from environments where they are constantly criticized, misunderstood, overlooked, or treated unfairly? Either way, these bold decisions don't come out of nowhere. No one truly wants to be disconnected or estranged from their family unless they have hit a breaking point. And more often than not, that involves years of blurred boundaries, emotional neglect, or over involvement, especially when adult children get married. Suddenly, they are put in a position, the impossible position of having to choose between their spouse and their parents, each with different values and expectations. One thing most people often overlook is that children are not seeking perfection from their parents. We know our parents are human and that every stage of life is as new to them as it is to us. Mistakes are part of being human, and many adults are able to reach a place of acceptance and even acknowledge their parents' struggles. But it becomes difficult when parents refuse to self reflect, take accountability, or admit they could be wrong, and instead they deflect by gaslighting their children's emotional experiences with reminders of how much they have done. No one is denying their sacrifices. What children are asking for is simply to be seen and acknowledged for who they are without constant justification. Sometimes the most basic and powerful act of human connection is being able to say, I'm sorry. Eventually, this dynamic creates stress, fractures intimacy, and often causes tension in their marriage. But from the parents' perspective, any deviation from their ideologies or tradition is seen as betrayal. Even well intentioned change is often met with resistance or worse, hostility. Now, I come from a large family and I've witnessed how many young marriages have fallen apart not because of incompatibility, but because their families never gave them the space to form their own values, beliefs, and boundaries as a new unit. Now, in many cultures, children are raised with an unspoken contract to be of service to the family. Every child is given a role: a caretaker, a fixer, an achiever, or head of the family, and they are treated accordingly. But now, as we explore the lasting impact of adverse childhood experiences, we begin to understand how such roles shaped our nervous system, particularly the ventral vagus complex, which governs emotional attunement, safety, and connection. Now, if you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where acknowledgement was rare, and where you were expected to help without thanks, you internalized that dynamic. You likely entered adulthood expecting the same from others, especially in romantic relationships or marriage. What we often label as entitlement is actually a learned behavior, a mirror of what was expected from them as children. And this emotional legacy is often unconsciously passed on to future generations. So, yes, sometimes going no contact is the only way to step away from the chaos and noise that has prevented you from forming your own identity. You can't build your self confidence or emotional clarity in a space that constantly makes you feel like you are not enough. That doesn't mean you are ungrateful. It means you are choosing to heal what was broken in a safe, contained space so that you don't unintentionally pass your pain onto someone else. The first rule of healing is emotional safety. If you never felt safe growing up, you owe it to yourself to change that. Step away, take space, let yourself process the grief, the rage, the confusion. That time alone will help you explore your emotions, reflect on your experiences, and rebuild your identity, one that was never given a chance to exist beyond other people's expectations of you. No contact is not a trend, it's not a buzzword, it's a lifeline for people whose emotional and psychological well being was consistently eroded. In previous generations, people tolerated abusive behavior or compromised their truth because resources were limited. But we are not living in the 80s anymore. We now have tools, options, and opportunities to be emotionally, financially, and mentally independent. And if you have ever spoken to someone who's gone no contact and actually taken the time to heal, you'll find they often carry a quiet wisdom. They have addressed and processed their pain, they have found clarity, and they have developed the emotional capacity to accept their parents for who they are, even if that acceptance comes with boundaries or limited contact. Because the reality is, you can't heal in the same environment that broke you, and you can't expect different outcomes by repeating the same patterns. Now, from my personal experience in my family, myself, my siblings, and even some of my cousins have gone no contact with our parents at some point. Not out of spite, but because we knew after many, many years and many, many failed attempts nothing was going to change. And that distance gave us the time and space to heal, to discover who we were beyond the roles we were assigned at home. Eventually, we expanded our capacity to accept, to forgive, to set boundaries, and to maintain some form of connection, even if it looks different now because the healing was one sided. And if someone isn't willing, you can't force them to meet you halfway, even if that is your parents or your own family members. And that is the goal, not to cut off everyone, but to come home to yourself, build emotional safety, and then grow the capacity to navigate the imperfect, messy relationships that life will continue to throw your way. Because let's be real, healing isn't about avoiding life, it's about becoming equipped to live with it with boundaries, clarity, and a deeper connection to yourself. I hope this video resonated with you, and if you need support in your healing journey, I am here more than happy to guide you on your path to healing. And if you need more information, you can find that in this video below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again in my next video.